What would you do if a former police officer turned into a fugitive? Imagine the chaos, the fear, the adrenaline. How would you react if the person meant to protect and serve became the one you feared most? Stay tuned to unravel this gripping story. The beginning. Christopher Dorner, once a trusted officer in the Los Angeles Police Department, suddenly found himself on the other side of the law. In 2013, Dorner declared war on the Los Angeles Police Department, accusing them of corruption, racism, and injustice. But what drove him to such an extreme? Was it madness or a twisted sense of justice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Dorner's story began years earlier when he joined the Los Angeles Police Department with hopes of making a difference. However, his career took a dark turn after he reported a fellow officer for excessive force. He claimed that this act of whistleblowing led to his unjust dismissal. How would you feel if you were punished for trying to do the right thing? Christopher Dorner joined the Los Angeles Police Department in 2005. He had served in the Navy Reserve, where he was known for his discipline and dedication. His dreams of becoming a police officer were fueled by a desire to protect the innocent and uphold justice. But his dream began to crumble in 2007 when he reported his training officer, Teresa Evans, for allegedly kicking a suspect during an arrest. Dorner claimed that this report led to a series of retaliations against him, eventually culminating in his dismissal from the force in 2008. Feeling betrayed and wronged, Dorner fought to clear his name, but his appeals were denied. His life spiraled into a dark place. He felt that the system he had sworn to uphold was deeply flawed and corrupt. The seeds of vengeance were planted. How would you cope if you believed that the institution you trusted was conspiring against you? Dorner's manifesto. It all started with a manifesto, a chilling document posted online. Dorner outlined his grievances in explicit detail, naming specific officers and officials he accused of wrongdoing. His words weren't just a cry for help, they were a declaration of war. He vowed to use unconventional and asymmetric warfare to bring destruction to the Los Angeles Police Department and their families. Dorner's manifesto was filled with anger, despair, and a desperate need for vindication. He addressed it to America, pleading for an understanding of his plight. He described his accusations of racism, his belief that the Los Angeles Police Department had not reformed since the Rodney King incident, and his desire to clear his name. Was he seeking justice or simply revenge? How would you react if you were one of the named targets? Share your thoughts in the comments. The first attacks. The manhunt began with bloodshed. On February 3rd, 2013, Dorner ambushed and killed Monica Kwan and her fiancé, Keith Lawrence, in Irvine, California. Monica was the daughter of Randall Kwan, a retired Los Angeles Police Department captain who had represented Dorner in his disciplinary hearings. They weren't police officers, but innocent civilians caught in Dorner's quest for vengeance. Can you imagine the terror their families felt? Comment on how you think this act impacted the overall manhunt. The murders sent shockwaves through the community and the Los Angeles Police Department. Suddenly, Dorner's threats became all too real. The police were now on high alert, and the public was gripped by fear. How would you feel knowing that a vengeful ex-cop was on the loose, potentially targeting anyone connected to the Los Angeles Police Department? Monica and Keith were ambushed in their car, parked in a quiet residential neighborhood. The brutality of the attack shocked everyone. For Dorner, it was a calculated move to send a message to his perceived enemies. He believed that by targeting their loved ones, he would strike fear into the hearts of those he held responsible for his downfall. How do you think the Los Angeles Police Department reacted to this attack on one of their own's family? Share your thoughts. Fear and paranoia spread. As the news of the murders broke, fear spread like wildfire. Police across Southern California were put on high alert. Citizens were on edge, wondering where Dorner would strike next. Every police officer became a potential target. Would you feel safe knowing a determined and trained former officer was out there, hunting his perceived enemies? Law enforcement agencies launched one of the largest manhunts in California history. Hundreds of officers, federal agents, and military personnel were deployed to find Dorner. Roadblocks were set up, and tips poured in from the public. But Dorner seemed to vanish, leaving everyone on edge. Dorner's next targets were police officers themselves. On February 7, 2013, he ambushed two Riverside police officers, killing one and seriously wounding the other. The ambush took place in the early morning hours as the officers were stopped at a red light. Dorner approached their vehicle and opened fire with a rifle. The sudden, brutal attack left the law enforcement community in shock and mourning. How do you think the Riverside police officers' colleagues reacted to this deadly attack? Civilians were also terrified. Reports of sightings came in from all over Southern California, and many turned out to be false alarms. Schools were placed on lockdown, and people were urged to stay indoors. How would you feel if your community was on lockdown due to the threat of a fugitive on the loose? The high-speed chase. The tension reached its peak during a high-speed chase through the snowy mountains of Big Bear, California. Picture the scene: flashing lights, sirens blaring, and Dorner in a stolen truck, racing through the treacherous terrain. On February 7, 2013, Dorner's truck was found burning in the mountains near Big Bear Lake. The discovery set off an intensive search of the area, but Dorner was nowhere to be found. Had he fled deeper into the wilderness, or was he hiding in plain sight? What would you do if you were part of the search team, knowing that Dorner could be lurking nearby? The search of Big Bear Lake was a massive operation involving multiple law enforcement agencies. Officers scoured the area on foot, by helicopter, and using heat-sensing technology. But the dense forest and harsh weather conditions made the search incredibly challenging. Meanwhile, Dorner was hiding in a cabin, biding his time. How would you feel if you were one of the officers tasked with finding him in such difficult conditions? Days later, Dorner resurfaced. He hijacked a vehicle and took its driver hostage, then later released him unharmed. The chase that followed was straight out of a movie. High-speed pursuits through mountain roads, gunfire echoing through the forest. How do you think this chase compares to those in the movies? Share your thoughts below. The shootout. The chase ended in a dramatic shootout. Dorner barricaded himself in a cabin, surrounded by law enforcement. The air was thick with tension as bullets flew. The sound of gunfire echoed through the mountains, and the standoff began. Dorner exchanged heavy gunfire with the officers, and one deputy was killed, another wounded. The situation was dire. Law enforcement called in reinforcements, including SWAT teams and armored vehicles. Dorner was trapped, but he was not going down without a fight. What would you do if you were in that cabin, surrounded and facing the end? As the shootout continued, tear gas canisters were fired into the cabin. A fire broke out, and the flames quickly engulfed the structure. Inside, Dorner was trapped. Was this the end of his violent crusade? The shootout lasted for hours, with hundreds of rounds fired. The cabin where Dorner was holed up became a war zone. The sound of gunfire and explosions echoed through the mountains, and the standoff gripped the nation. People watched the events unfold live on television, wondering how it would all end. How do you think the media coverage of the shootout affected public perception of the manhunt? The end of the manhunt. The coroner later confirmed that Dorner died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His charred remains were found in the basement of the burned-out cabin. The manhunt was over, but the questions and controversies were just beginning. The end of the manhunt brought relief to many. Impact and aftermath. The Dorner Manhunt left a lasting impact on the Los Angeles Police Department, the public, and the media. It raised serious questions about police conduct, mental health, and the lengths one might go for perceived justice. How do you think this event has shaped public perception of law enforcement? Share your thoughts below. Dorner's allegations of racism and corruption within the Los Angeles Police Department sparked debates and prompted internal reviews. Some saw him as a martyr, a man pushed to the edge by a corrupt system. Others viewed him as a cold-blooded killer who used his grievances as an excuse for murder. How do you see him? A villain? A hero? Or something in between? A lasting mystery. Even after his death, Dorner remains a figure of controversy. His manifesto and the violent acts he committed continue to spark discussions about justice, revenge, and the thin line between heroism and villainy. Was he a madman driven by delusions, or was there some truth to his accusations? The story of Christopher Dorner is more than a tale of crime and punishment. It's a glimpse into the dark side of justice. It forces us to question our perceptions of right and wrong, of sanity and madness. As you reflect on this harrowing event, ask yourself, what would you do if pushed to the edge? Would you fight back, seek revenge, or try to find another way? Comment your thoughts, share this video with your friends, and let's keep the conversation going.